pose, 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 I do adore. Pose, 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 I do adore. I got polls in different area codes. I got polls in different area codes. All right, what up? What is up, awesome people of the internet? Happy Tuesday, everybody. And you know what that means when it comes to Tuesday? Y'all know we talking about some polls because we love us some polls. The women's college basketball season is almost over, and we are just a short time away from conference tournaments. And then right after that, we have the NCAA tournament. And we're going to see who is going to make it to the end, y'all. And the polls are going to help us to do that. So these polls, while early in the season, it didn't matter as much. It was more of entertainment early in the season with all the movement and whatnot. Now it's really, really getting down to the nitty gritty in terms of where teams are standing. And y'all, we saw some very dramatic shifts from last week to this week. So let's get into it. Let's get into the rankings for women's college basketball. And y'all, we are in week 17, y'all. We saw some dramatic moves. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. All right. So, of course, at the top, we have South Carolina, who is just continuing to just dominate the competition. They just are the best thing in the SEC. They had two huge wins last week against one Alabama, two Kentucky. Both of those games were won by 28 points against Alabama, 48 points against Kentucky. They're just great. You know, all South Carolina needs is two more games, and then they have a perfect season, another perfect regular season. So yeah, South Carolina is just still really good. This week they do have a game against Arkansas, and they have a game against Tennessee. So hopefully Tennessee will be able to give them a run for their money, but it's looking like South Carolina will finish the season undefeated for a second time in a row. All right, for number 2, we have Ohio State. Ohio State is just continuing to cruise in the Big Ten. We saw some big wins this past week. We saw Celeste Taylor continuing to do her thing as well. Y'all, Celeste Taylor is one of those players that is she's in her 5th year. So she's one of those COVID players who benefited from having a second year. And this past week, she was on fire. She had between 2 games, she had 36 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists, and also 10 steals. This past week, Ohio State played both Penn State and Maryland, and they just won. You know, they continue to do their thing and make themselves known in the Big Ten. They are currently 24-3 on the season. I am very much interested to watch Ohio State play Iowa on Sunday. So that does close out the season for Ohio State. I believe that Ohio State will win that game. But I am very much interested to watch that game happen because to me, that really is the battle for the Big Ten. It is Ohio State versus Iowa. Yes, Indiana is in there as well, but for me, it really is a 2-man race between Ohio State and Iowa. At number 3, we have Texas that have moved on up. They moved up 2 spots from last week to number 3. And yeah, Texas is one of those teams that, like, they just continue to surprise me. They continue to surprise me at how steady Freddy they are, right? We saw them lose, a huge player in Rory Harmon. And we've seen them be able to take that in stride and still get some huge wins. So shout out to those Lady Longhorns because they just balling. So top 3 is South Carolina, Ohio State, who has broken the curse. I think has broken the number 2 curse and has stayed at number 2 for a little while right now. And then we have Texas rounding out the top three. For number 4, we have Stanford, who only moved down one spot after losing this past week in a surprise loss to Arizona. So this Arizona game was, I would say, a little bit of a surprise, but you know, they got because, one, because Cameron Brink wasn't there, and two, because Jada Williams just did her thing. I talked a little bit more about Jada Williams in yesterday's version of Women's Basketball Weekly. So if y'all haven't watched that, make sure to watch that. Stanford, I'm surprised they only went down one, especially because of that loss against Arizona. But we'll continue to see what happens from here. They are 24-4 on the season, and they play Oregon State this week. So I think that is going to be another test for Stanford to see if they can get the dub. And we'll see if Cameron Brink is still out with a non-COVID illness for that game. That game against Oregon State, I should say, is on Thursday. So that is a game that you all should be watching. And also, just to let you all know, that Stanford has clinched a part of the Pac-12 regular season championship. So yeah, this is their 27th regular season championship for the Pac-12. Yeah, Stanford's been really good for a very long time. All right, moving on to number 5 in the rankings, we have Virginia Tech, who looks good. Virginia Tech is a team that is on a little bit of a winning streak right now. And they're just continuing to win games and just making it happen, right? I think this is a team that has really, really found their stride, and it's really good to see. It really is good to see. They are 15-0 at home this season, which is just kind of fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to say about Virginia Tech other than the fact that they're finding ways to win. They're finding ways to win, and because of that, they're moving on up to number 5 in the AP rankings. We also have Iowa at 6. Iowa moved down 2 spots. I think it's just also it's yes, because of that loss that they had last week against Indiana, but I also think it's just because of the surge of both Texas and Virginia Tech. So yeah, we got our top 6 right there. Let's move on to the rest of the list. We have USC, who stays steady at number 7. They are 21-5 on the season. We all know they had that surprising upset loss yesterday against Utah, or not yesterday, on Sunday against Utah. And I'm surprised, kind of, that they stayed where they are. The kind of is that I'm not totally surprised, because the Pac-12 is kind of crazy. So like, even with the Stanford loss, I think when a Pac-12 team loses to a team they necessarily shouldn't lose to, it's not penalized as much as it is for other teams in other conferences. But yeah, USC is still at number 7. We'll see what they do sort of the rest of the way out. They do have a couple more games to sort of round out their season. All right, so USC's next couple games include Arizona and Arizona State. Yeah, Arizona just got Stanford, so we'll see if we'll see what happens between the battle of the freshmen, Jada Williams versus Juju Watkins. And that game is on Thursday against Arizona. All right, let's continue on with the Pac-12. At number 8, we have the UCLA Bruins, who moved up. They are moving on up. They beat Utah this past week dramatically by like 30-something points. And we will continue to see them play. They also played against Colorado, and they won that game as well. That game was actually on Monday. They beat Colorado. UCLA is a team that is on the rise because their number one player, Lauren Betts, is back, and they're just balling. You're seeing London Jones do her thing. You're seeing Kiki Rice do her thing, because it's not just, yes, Lauren Betts is the number one option for the team. However, the guards can score as well, and so that is something that UCLA will be able to use to their advantage, especially going down the stretch. In terms of their upcoming games, they also play Arizona State in Arizona to finish out the regular season. All right, at number 9, we have LSU, who have moved up 4 spots from last week. They are now 24-4 on the season. And I know there's been lots of people in my comments saying, why hasn't LSU moved? They've been winning. I mean, I say yes, absolutely. Yes, they have been winning, which is good. They've been winning games that they should win. And I think that we'll kind of see what the other teams do, because I think the other teams are the determining factor on like what happens to LSU in terms of rankings going forward, right? They have 2 more games this season. They play Georgia and they play Kentucky. They should win those games. Even if they do win both of those games, I don't really see them moving at all in the rankings. I see them still being at number 9, unless we see a team like UCLA, a team like USC, a team like Virginia Tech lose. Then maybe there's some more movement. But I really see LSU staying put at this number 9 spot. They play, again, as I said, they play Georgia and they play Kentucky this upcoming week. And this past week they played Texas A&M, Auburn, and Tennessee, and had some good wins on those teams. All right, moving on, we have UConn. UConn moved up 5 spots as well. So it's UCLA, it's LSU, and it's UConn moving on up in the rankings. UConn is now 24-5 on the season. They recently had a game that I went to against DePaul that they just absolutely demolished. DePaul. I think that UConn is in a similar spot of LSU in terms of I don't really see them moving much at all after this move to number 10, because they only play Villanova and Providence for the rest of the season. And like I don't think, yes, they'll win those games. They should win those games, but I don't think it moves the needle up for them at all. It really is determining. It's the teams at the top that determine what happens to both LSU and UConn going forward in terms of their rankings. For the most part, I see them staying put at number 10. All right, continuing on, we have Oregon State that have made their fall down the rankings. And a huge part of that downward trend is because of the game against Washington. Y'all, Oregon State is a team that is very good, but they got, y'all. They got because anybody can get got. They lost against Washington. They were, in that upset victory for the Washington Huskies. Oregon State is very good. They're very talented. They do have some huge games this upcoming week that could move them up. So they play Stanford on Thursday. They also play Cal on Saturday. The Cal game, yeah, they should win that game. But the Stanford game, I think if Oregon State can win that game or barely, or like if they can win the game or like just from the skin of their teeth lose the game, I think that helps them move up in the standings, because they are a very good team that just got a surprise loss against Washington. All right, continuing on, we have NC State, y'all. NC State is on a downward spiral, a severe downward spiral. I'm not exactly sure what happened. They were, on a winning streak, right? They won 8 of their last 9 games before this past week. And then all of a sudden they were on the road for 2 games back to back and they got an L on both of those trips. They played their in-state rival of North Carolina, which they lost. They played Duke as well. They lost that game as well. And this puts NC State in a sort of bad position. One, yes, they dropped 6 points, but also the ACC is a tough conference. And now NC State is sort of tied with other teams for that third spot in the ACC. Y'all, the ACC has been a tough league as well. Yes, I talk a lot about the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 is the toughest league in women's college basketball, but I do think that the ACC is a close second. We see teams like North Carolina, teams like Duke, others who are just doing their thing in the ACC. Yeah, NC State has to get it together. They do have 2 more games this season. They play Syracuse on Thursday, and they play Wake Forest. I think that that the Syracuse game is going to be a big test for NC State because Syracuse is a really good team, right? And we'll see what NC State can do if they can get the dub. They should get the dub. They're a better team than Syracuse. However, we saw how they lost last week 2 games. So we'll see what happens for Syracuse this upcoming week. They are number 12, dropping 6 spots from last week. And at number 13, we have Colorado, who moved down 2 spots from last week. Yes, they did lose that game against UCLA. But I think it's more about the surgence of other teams, not necessarily the poor play on Colorado's point. They are 20-6 on the season. All right, at number 14, we have the Indiana Hoosiers. They are 22-4 on the season. I think the reason for their non-movement, I should say, is because yes, they beat Iowa, but they also lost against Illinois. So it sort of offsets each other in a way. They do round out the season playing Northwestern and Maryland, which are both games they should win. So I don't really see much movement at all going forward for Indiana. For K-State, K-State has dropped 5 spots from last week. And that's in huge part to their surprise loss against their in-state rivals, Kansas. Aoki is back, which is great. However, she's not 100% back. So I think it is just going to take a little bit more time for her to really, really get going with this team and be able to help them sort of make their push for the NCAA tournament. And even though Aoki wasn't 100% back, she still balled last week and still led the team in scoring and whatnot and rebounds. But still, it wasn't enough to get them that dub against Kansas. They do have 2 more games this season. They play Iowa State and they play Texas Tech. All right. Let's talk about the West Coast women for a second of Gonzaga. Gonzaga is in the 16th spot with a 28-2 run. The Zags really are the mid-major team that is they just keep giving great wins. They keep giving us great wins to talk about. They had a huge victory against Pepperdine. Gonzaga is a good team. I can't wait to see what they actually do in the NCAA tournament. They are number 16 at a record of 28-2. Primarily, the reason why they're ranked the way they're ranked is because of the strength of the conference that they're in. That I think that made a huge factor. Yes, they've won all the conference games. However, still not as competitive as some of the other leagues. Notre Dame, let's talk about Notre Dame for a second. Notre Dame is a team that is trying to sort of continue to improve. And this past week, they had 3 games, and they won all 3. I think this is a team that, as the season sort of continues, we don't have much time left to go in the ACC. And Notre Dame is surging a little bit, kind of. You know, so they beat Duke, they beat Boston College, they beat Clemson last week. Hannah Hidalgo is still leading the way for the team, and they are in like that tie for third place in the ACC. Shout out to Notre Dame. They're getting it together. They are getting it together, and almost all of their losses, 5 of their 6 losses, have come in the ACC. All right, we have Utah. That is number 18 on the list. Utah, as we mentioned earlier, had that big win against USC. Utah is Utah. We we don't quite know what we really expect every week, because Utah is a team that can get anybody. Absolutely a team that can get anybody. But sometimes they lose games that they shouldn't lose. And so that is for sure a thing. But yeah, Utah some ballers though. Utah are some ballers. They are in the 18th spot, and they did not move from last week to this week. All right, next up we have Syracuse, who moved down 2 spots from last week. They won probably because that big loss that they had against North Carolina this past week. Syracuse is now 23-5 on the season, and of course they are in the ACC. Oklahoma moved up 3 spots from last week. They're now in the 20th spot. Baylor is 21, with some big wins last week as well, especially with a very, very close win against West Virginia. I'm not gonna sing the song. I know I try to do it every time, and then people correct me in the comments and tell me the correct words, and I forget it again. So I'm not gonna sing the West Virginia song, but y'all know the song I'm singing in my head. In my head, I'm singing a song. All right. So yeah, Baylor moved up 3 spots from last week with that statement win against West Virginia. Louisville has dropped down 2 spots from last week because of that loss that they had against Virginia. Virginia is a good team, but having a loss like that against a team that is not ranked, yes, will move you down a little bit. Creighton is down 2 spots from last week as well. I think it's more to other teams' success, not necessarily their non-success. They are now 22-4 on the season. We have those Mountain West women of UNLV that is in the 24th spot, and with a tie actually for the 24th spot is West Virginia and UNLV. So West Virginia, still making that top 25. They are tied. It's kind of rare that we see a tie in the top 25, but yeah, we do see one right now. Other teams that receive votes included Fairfield, Duke, Princeton, who has finally dropped off of the top 25 ranking because of that surprise loss to Columbia. Last week I talked about Columbia and how I watched Columbia play against Harvard, and I thought Columbia was a very talented team. And I was like, can they get Princeton? And yes, they did. They got Princeton. So shout out to Columbia. We have North Carolina, who also got some votes, Florida State, Columbia, and Mississippi. All right, so that's basically the information that y'all need to know for this week of women's college basketball. Again, we are past week 17 of women's college basketball with the AP rankings because we got basically 1 week left of women's college basketball. This is the time for teams to make their final adjustments that they need to make before we get into conference tournament play, and then we head on over to the craziness of the NCAA tournament. Are y'all excited? I'm excited. So yeah, let's get ready. Let's get ready for women's college basketball because y'all, it's about to be a wild ride. So buckle y'all seatbelts and hope for the best for your favorite team. Because we're going to see some upsets, we're going to see some craziness, and I'm here for it all because, as I always say, anybody can get got. Anybody. Don't matter who you are. All right. So anyway, without further ado, that is the video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't hit that like button, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And until next time, guys. Bye-bye.